Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for watching the Storytelling Alchemist show. I'm not sure if it's Mercury in retrograde today, but I've been having some technical difficulties even getting the show going up. It might be my guest, very high energy too, so we're going to be bringing him on here in a second. But everything seems to be we're just going to roll with this, and it's going to be wonderful. I just know it is. So let me introduce my guest. We met a few years ago, and we were business partners on a cruise in 2019. He was the wonderful and very successful host and creator of the conference Victory of Light. He has been on The View. He's been on George Norrie's show on Gaia TV. Just an all-around amazing person. I want to welcome you to the show, Victor Paruta, and for all of you to welcome him as well. So I'm going to bring him on right now. Hi, Victor. How are you?
Hey, Jeremy. How are you?
I was going to ask you. I'm not sure. I'm not an astrologer, but are we in retrograde right now? Because the technology is not working.
We're not in retrograde, but I think there's something going on there because everybody's telling me they're having the same issues. Something is retrograde, or something is a little off in the stars. Things are breaking down, and it sometimes feels like Mercury retrograde. But that ended a few weeks ago. So
we never know. I think it's Lionsgate's going. We're getting ready to go into the Lionsgate, so never know.
Exactly. Yes.
So
we're living in weird times.
I'm excited about having you on the show. I know we just saw each other a month and a half ago, but we've done a lot of work together in the past, and I have realized I had never had you actually on my show, and I'm excited because you've done such incredible work. And I wanted to kind of just ask you a couple questions of how you got into this work, but then also some of the work you do around the paranormal and all that kind of stuff. I figured that would lead us into a pretty solid conversation because these are areas you're an expert in, and I just thought that would be great. So, but I guess my first question for you is, how did you get into the psychic work and into the psychic realm work? I know you've been in a good amount of time, but what brought you in this world?
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think where to start because it started pretty young for me, but I'll tell you really essentially what happened. I'm not going to start in my teenage years, but that's when I started having spontaneous psychic experiences. For me, it was a series of precognitive dreams where I would dream a snippet of my life, and it would, a week or two later, I'd be in the video of the dream. It was a complete total replay in real life of the dream, and that kept going on for a couple of years, and it got me thinking, how in the world could something like that happen? Because it was just exactly like, everything. It was like a video of the dream. But as a kid growing up, I found myself in a little bit of a identity crisis after graduating from college and really not knowing who I was or didn't understand my place in the scheme of things. And I had just moved to Cincinnati I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to Cincinnati. And somebody suggested I go see a psychic. And when I went to see that psychic, the light bulb came on. I understood myself. I felt like somebody up there cared about me, understood me, knew me deeply, intimately, powerfully. I heard the words that I needed to hear as far as encouragement. You can make it. Keep going. There's a reason for your existence. And the love and acceptance I felt from the reader and from the spirit guides that communicated to me through him, it was the most profound hour of my life that I'd ever had up to that point in time. I was 21 years old. And it really was exactly what I had been searching for everywhere all my life and never found anywhere. I didn't find it in church. I didn't find it in school. I didn't find it at home in my family. I found it through that one reading. And at that time, before I knew what it was like to actually be a psychic and do psychic readings and help people in that manner, or have the experience of channeling psychic information for people. I remember, Jeremy, it was so funny. I was terrified. I was afraid this man would be able to read my mind and see all my dirty, guilty thoughts. And I came to know that all that stuff I had in my mind was a bunch of BS. I mean, there wasn't anything I had to really be ashamed of or worried that he would see. And instead, it was the most powerful experience of truth and transparency and enlightenment that I'd ever had. And I will never forget that. And it really just was the thing that made sense to me. And because I had such a powerful experience, I wanted other people to experience what I had just experienced. And I'd always been into metaphysics and spirituality. Even when I was a kid, I was into astrology and numerology and handwriting analysis and anything where I could, kind of have insight into people or understand people better. But it was that reading that really started the whole thing, along with a lot of personal experiences that opened me up psychically as a medium, as a paranormal investigator, as a healer, as everything that I've done. So it worked for me. Let's just put it that way. It gave me what I was looking for, and it was powerfully healing and confirming, reassuring.
That's awesome. And I think that's what our work is all about, is helping people find their path, or get in alignment, or have some healing, or find reassurance like you received. And I think that what I love about our work is people that are very unsure of themselves, and I know you've experienced this before, or they're unsure of this world that is beyond their normal, going to work, watching TV at night and taking care of their children and their spouses and mothers and dads and grandparents and all that kind of stuff. And it really, the practitioners give them hope. And I'm sure you've done that many times for many of your clients throughout the years. Healing and hope. I think it would be probably the key word that I would use for our work. So
I couldn't agree more. I think it's so true. And the work we do is in general, there are people respond to psychics in different ways. Some people run in the other direction. Some people think we're all charlatans. But when people have a powerful experience with a psychic, as you said, it's life-changing. I mean, they will never be the same, whether it's a powerful communication with a loved one that they haven't had closure with, or the clearing of negative energy from their home, that has terrified their families and had them planning to move out of the house, or just to understand why the things that happen to you, what the purpose of it, why, that it isn't just random, that there is an order to it all. And when you understand things like karma and learning, I think people, in order to be spiritually and psychologically and emotionally healthy, I think most of us probably need some sort of a sense of meaning. And all those things that you said before, raising your kids, going to school, going to work, dealing with family and friends, dealing with the issues of life, money, all that other stuff. You're not going to get meaning out of that. If you're looking for meaning out of the mundane world, you'll be lost, because you're not going to find it in traditional ways of seeing or thinking, or the blueprint, that society's created for our life paths, what's expected of us. And there's such a strong need to conform to some extent. But some people fit into that, but I think most people don't. Some people kind of fit in to the way you're supposed to be as a human being in this world. But some of those people that do all the right things, they're valedictorians and captains of the football team, and then you think they've got it made, and then one day you hear that they killed themselves. They need something more. I mean, just because you pass all the tests and jump through all the hoops and are what society expects you to be, or those messages you get of what you're supposed to be like, doesn't mean you're going to be a happy person if you can check all those boxes. Sometimes being a little different helps you find your own way. And that's the way you have to do it, because the other way won't work for you.
I think this is a really good conversation, because especially in this, I mean, of course, I've heard this many, many times, but especially in the past year and a half, I've heard countless clients and friends say things like, I feel like there's so much more. And I feel like I'm so bored with life. I've heard that one quite a bit. And really what I think they're talking about is what you're saying. They're looking for meaning. And not to say that there can't be meaning in being a parent, but the truth is that they're not, they're checking the boxes like you're mentioning, and not necessarily following their heart or their soul or their passion, with their work and whatever. If there's a passion for being an attorney, then that's wonderful. If there's a passion for being a nurse or a doctor, that's wonderful. But that lines with your soul path, which I'm sure that, that's where you kind of went from that reading, is down your soul path, and really took you on the journey. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Some people do align with their dharma or the role they're playing in their life as their soul path. And to some extent, I think the purpose of our life can be found in our life story and the life that we are living. But I think this was kind of a destiny thing for me, because I didn't fit in to all the other things. I mean, looking back at high school and, the ways that what I was very attracted to was art and writing. I loved poetry. And, looking back, reading poetry, writing poetry, it teaches you the nuance of language and the subtlety of the way poetry can communicate something using words as a medium. And there's a rhythm to it that's beyond just the words. There's something magical that's created, that's conveyed. And, in spirit, when you're channeling spirit or doing spiritual work where you're really plugged in, the energy coming into the reading or into the room or the space that you're in, just like Victory of Light at the expo, so many people there, they are walking around blissed out. They've got a smile on their face, and they've left their troubles at the door. And then when they leave, they've got a smile on their face because they've been basking in an energy of unconditional love and acceptance, which I really worked to. That was my motive behind the show. That was my intention, is I wanted the show to be so inclusive, and I wanted it to be for everybody. And people really felt that sense of community and, that commonality with their fellow human beings. And the fun of being able to talk about metaphysical subjects with people that don't give them that look like they're crazy. And the whole thing added up to just a fun fest. I mean, you get to play. And, spirit is an amazing thing. And I wish I had experienced it kind of early in life. I started meditating when I was 15. I took transcendental meditation. And TM, transcendental meditation, when I was doing it at that age, it put me in a state of joy that I did not have in my outer life. Of course, there was some joy, some happiness, but spiritual joy is a different thing. It's not really like laughing at a joke. It's a sense of okayness, a sense of feeling good. And, when you're there, you're lit up. I mean, you're like a light bulb. People notice it. People are attracted to the light. They want what you have, and what you have is spirit. It's not, it's not anything you imagined or thought. It's a living presence of light that you're in, that you're radiating, and people can feel the authenticity and the love. That's what I think everybody needs. I think we all need love, and to feel that experience of what that really feels like, the unconditional type of love, the love where you are loved, the love where you feel that sense of commonality, that sense of connection with all people and with all of life itself. As a matter of fact, Jeremy, if I were to start my church, it would be a religion based on life itself, that feeling of being alive, that sense of aliveness that's inside of you. And if we focus on that through our breath and really appreciate that being alive is a miracle, not something to get through, it's a gift. And it goes by so fast, Jeremy. I mean, I realize at the age I am now, looking back, where did it go? It really is like in the blink of an eye. But it is really a gift. It's a very, very special gift. And you have that gift. And just the fact that you are alive, that you can breathe, that you can walk, that you can do anything that you can do, it's an experience that this incarnation is going to give you that you won't have after you leave, after you go home, unless you come back. But then you're a different person anyway.
So if you start a church in St. Petersburg, we'll call it Victory of Love, and you'll be the pastor? No?
I don't know. I toy with that idea because I love that feeling I get when I feel the aliveness within myself. And it's so simple. Imagine having a religion where there's no Jesus or Mohammed or Allah or Buddha or any gods at all, where there's only life and there's no dogma at all. And the whole religion is based on breathing and feeling the life within you. I mean, yeah, and connecting that as your essence. And, we think so many things, and almost everything we think is false. I think we go through many deaths throughout a life, including identity, like who am I now? When we're in a transitional phase, let's say getting married, getting divorced, having kids, getting a new job, moving to a new town, starting a new chapter of your life. For a while there, you're not quite sure who you are. You're in the process of becoming what you are, and then you become that and just keep evolving. I had no idea I'd be a psychic. I mean, a psychic actually predicted I'd be doing readings at a meditation circle I used to be a member of, and I didn't believe him. And a year and a half later, there I was doing readings.
That sounds like what happened to me.
Really?
I was about 23 years old, and somebody said, "You're going to be a very big, great teacher." And I'm like, "I'm still hungover. Please don't tell me this stuff." So, it just happens. But you know what? We never know what we're going to do. We just have to follow. Was it Joseph Campbell said, "Follow your bliss," and and it just kind of takes you down that road. I kind of wanted to touch just a little bit on this because I know that this is something you explore, and I know you've done shows on this on the and not to say we're having a very positive show, by the way, but I think this is actually a good subject. And Victor talks about on the dark entities of the psychic realm, and he's an expert on it because you were on Nori's show for that. Am I correct?
Yeah, Beyond Belief with George Nori on Gaia TV. You can catch it on Amazon Prime Video right now. I'm on season 2, episodes 11 and 13. And on one of those episodes, I talk about dark forces of the psychic realm. The reason that show happened is George likes to bring up those dark topics. He's curious about them. And a lot of times when he asks a psychic about negative energy or dark energy, the almost 90 some plus percent of the time psychics say, well, I don't believe in it. I don't deal with it. And this time I said, oh, you want to talk about that? Okay, let's talk about it. And it's a part of life. I mean, you can't say that evil does not exist and that negative forces don't influence people's lives. I've always been fascinated by human psychology, but there are things where people do become possessed. There can be entities that affect their lives. It could be like a dark cloud that follows them around. Sometimes they're born with it. Sometimes they encounter it at some point during their lives. Sometimes it takes over their lives where they're so fatigued that they're really just dragging through the day. And a lot of times they don't even realize they might have an attachment or a spirit attachment that's draining them of energy. And that's a very common thing. I mean, there are a lot of movies made out of possession and hauntings and things, but it exists in real life. I get calls about it all the time. And so, when I hung out my shingle as a psychic, Jeremy, 30 years ago, I didn't know who'd be calling, but if they don't know who to call and they've called everybody else, they're going to call the psychic last. And sometimes they're going to think, I wish I'd called him first.
God, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think too, do you think, like, one of the things that, you mentioned earlier that, and I know this, a lot of psychics try to say, or people in the spiritual realm try to say, oh, there's no, I don't deal with the evil side. And I'm like, well, the basics of shamanism says that you have to go into your underworld and face that part of yourself in order to find wholeness. And I think that when it comes to even, the Buddha at the Bodhi tree had to face demons, and so did Jesus in the stories of Jesus in the Bible. Now, whether these men existed or not, the metaphors are there to talk about that we have to face darkness. And part of that is temptation. And so what do demons do? They try to tempt you and mislead you. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, to be afraid of it or not talk about it means that you're opening your mind up to potentially not, you can't just be like, la, 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 like the Smurfs running through the world and not, recognize that there could be something that harms you. And especially in this realm, I know a lot of people that do some crazy stuff in this realm, and I'm like, you gotta be careful sometimes. But yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you on that. So
yeah, and just look in the mirror. I mean, we all of us tend to live in under the fantasy that we're only good, but anybody is capable of doing something bad. It just depends on the circumstance, and you may find yourself in one of those circumstances where a split decision got you into a lot of trouble, or you chose to do something that would be considered dark, or you're actually entertaining thoughts that would be considered evil. Satan, you're not going to walk down the street and encounter an evil in the form of, some goat or demon standing there. It's usually going to be in the form of just an everyday person. So I remember once I went home to meditate, and being empathic, you just absorb things. And I realized that earlier in the day during that meditation, I'd encountered a woman who was just standing there on the street, and she was really wishing that something really bad would happen to somebody. I mean, she was directing a lot of hatred at somebody at that moment. And during that meditation, I kind of realized, my God, that woman in that moment was, possibly the most evil person that I'd encountered in a long time, because they had a malintent. They wanted to hurt somebody, or they wanted to stop somebody. And, that's a lot of bad karma. If you really set out to hurt somebody, that's that's going to come back on you. Karma is going to get you back. And, you know, if you unintentionally hurt somebody, maybe you just say something that triggers an old wound or a button, or maybe you were just a little too honest. You know, I don't think there's bad karma to that because you didn't really mean it. But evil takes on many forms, and all of us are dealing with it to some extent now. Most of us have swept our less attractive qualities under a rug, but that doesn't mean they're gone. It means that we're pretending they're not there. And through the principle of psychological projection, since we've disavowed or disowned these qualities within ourselves, we will tend to see them in other people or see them in the environment around us by projecting our shadow, which is what you were talking about before, our shadow qualities, those aspects of ourselves that we may not be consciously aware of, or we've swept under the rug because we want to pretend they aren't there. We see those in other people. So the way we see others, what we see in the world, reveals a lot about ourselves. The world is a mirror that reflects you back. You know, so if you're always angry and the world always sucks, it's because you're always angry and maybe you suck, you know, to be kind of crude about it. But, you know, if you're loving, and when you tune into high level enlightened beings, whether living or on the other side, unconditional love, when you're living in that as that, that's all you ever see. All you ever see is love, because you are love. Yeah. So it's important to have that quality of self-observation and observe in a detached manner what thoughts come to you, what you turn people into by your hatred, maybe by your racism, or, you know, by your judgment of them without understanding them. And it's so true. You know, you got to walk a mile in someone's moccasins or shoes before you really understand their lives. We prejudge, but we're not seeing them. We're seeing ourselves. So the shadow is at work as part of our wiring, and it's behind a lot of human problems. It's behind a lot of the wars that we've been through. It's behind a lot of the kind of racism and nationalism and us versus them. And what spirituality teaches you, and what reincarnation teaches you, which is a part of my philosophy of life, is that you might be a white man in this lifetime, but in a previous life, you could have been a black woman or an Asian person, or, you know, anything or everything. And I've studied my past lives a lot. And I realized by seeing so many of my past lives that walking through a crowd, I could have been any of those people. You know, these are coats, you know, like we get dressed in the morning and we put on our clothes. For the span of this lifetime, this is your outfit, you know, and when you die, you're going to take it right off, just like you would take a coat off. And your radiant soul will shine through, and you'll realize that person you thought you were, you really weren't that person. You know, you were something bigger than that. You were the light within that person, experiencing that life, recording that life, learning through the experiences of that life.
Yeah, that is really cool. And when you talk about that too, it just like kind of makes you, especially when you think about somebody that's judging or angry with somebody, you realize that they are probably in some form judging or angry with themselves too. You know, there's like there's such anger going on, and it's like or even saying life sucks. You know, I find that those people are just, well, those people, I've been there. You know, it's in my lifetime where I'm like, life sucks.
I've been there too. I mean, I was just there, you know, yesterday or the day before. I mean, we've got to stay positive, because, you know, the energy that we're in is the filter through which we see the world. So if we woke up on the wrong side of the bed, that whole day is going to be just a series of mishaps. Whereas if you tune into a higher energy, like a higher energy of love, or read something inspiring, or think about good thoughts, you'll be bringing that energy through your day and seeing the world through that lens. So it is we really have to understand personal energy management so that we can live our best lives. Yeah. You got to give yourself a pep talk.
Or you just call Victor and he'll give you a pep talk too. So,
Or Jeremy.
Or Jeremy. Well, it's good. We do. I mean, it is too true. I mean, sometimes there's days where, like, I just had to give myself one of those a couple days ago, and I was like, because I was in like a funk about something, and I was like, you know what? You've got a really good life, so put the big boys pants on, and move through this. And it's one of those things, and I kind of giggle at myself sometimes about the inner stuff that's going on in my mind, and then go, I've called myself a jerk sometimes, and it's not meant to put myself down. It's more because I'm just giggling, because now I'm more self-aware than I was, 15 or 20 years ago, where you get caught in, you understand this, you get caught in this mode, and you're like there for days, and you're like, where did this come from? You're not even conscious of it. You're like,
you don't even know you're in it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, look at me. I've just been so negative. And you don't realize it when you've been in it. But part of being a psychic, part of being a healer, or part of being aware of energy is you do learn how to switch that energy. You know how to upgrade it. Like a lot of people, they're angry throughout their work day, or they're in a bad mood when they get home from work, and they come home and yell at the wife and kids and kick the dog. That's one way of handling it. That's one way of releasing it. So people stop at the gym and they work it out, and then they go home and they're bringing their best self forward. And psychics know how to do visualizations and energy exercises to get out of a funk. And throughout the world, look at the Asian countries, they're doing Qigong, or, people are doing yoga, and it's a way to reconnect. It's something that we really have to do, because this world tends to drag you down. We can get lost in the minutia of life. But really, what's really important, we take so much for granted, Jeremy. We take everything for granted. Here I am, look at us. We're talking to each other. We're talking on Zoom. For one thing, we're alive. For a second thing, we can talk. We can see. We've got this technology. We can hear. There's a lot of people that don't even have any of that. So right now, we're effing blessed, man. I mean, we really are, just with the things that we don't even think about every single moment of the day that we have. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. We take our lives for granted, and it's a beautiful experience. It can be, but there's an art to life. There's an art to living. And I think that one of the things I wish they taught in school was actually how to get along, how to treat other people, for example, what character is like, how you speak to others and how you don't. A little bit about maybe what we're talking about here, how to get in a good mood when you're in a bad mood. This is such a weird world that we're born into, and we're going to die from this world. And then when we come back, chances are the world's going to be a lot like it is today, or because Jesus talked about all this, didn't he? Mm-hmm. All the old masters lived in a world that had the same delusions that this world of ours has in 2021. And it's always been a struggle. But just like Buddha or Jesus, after their trial period, they're testing, and they realize that I can give this world up as long as I have the kingdom of heaven. And because that's forever. That is forever. And if you're there now while you're alive, you can bring it into this world and share it with other people. Give them a taste of it. Give them some hope. Give them some light. Give them some encouragement. Give them some love. Give them all those things that I felt during that first reading I ever had. Not in manipulating them, but in understanding them. You know, it's so funny, Jeremy. I was going for a bike ride yesterday, and I passed by a couple, and they were just walking and talking. And we all need somebody to talk to. I mean, even if it's a friend or family member. But the good thing about a psychic, when you come to see a psychic, it isn't a friend or family member or coworker, somebody that has an agenda for you. We may never see that client again. But, you know, if you're talking to the right psychic, you know that everything that you say is going to be completely confidential. And you could talk about all those things that you're afraid to talk to other people about with somebody that knows how to listen and somebody that can give you some psychic or spiritual resonance or feedback based on what you've said that gives you perspective. And when you have perspective, that's really very, very helpful because it makes you realize it's just the way I'm seeing it. It's the lens through which I'm seeing it. You know, it's not that bad.
Yeah. That's really our perspective. I mean, you brought up a lot of great points there. When we were talking about we're blessed. I mean, I was just thinking about, you know, we're talking on webcam right now, but I remember back in the day when you'd call somebody long distance, and you'd be like, "All right, 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes." Do you remember those days? That you'd
I remember.
Or when
you got to put another quarter in the phone.
Yeah, or when the phones you would only call after 9 or on the weekends of the cell phone. And so things have just really connected us. And now, even during COVID, I mean, I had game nights on Zoom. I mean, even though we didn't necessarily have conferences like yours, like Victory Life, but there was a lot of teachers out there doing things on Zoom, and there were still things to keep us going. And what I found a blessing, Victor, is that I watched people start stepping out of their shells and doing things that they've always wanted to do. You know, like there's coaches and spiritual teachers and people that stepped out during that time frame. They're like, now's the time. Now's the time for me to get out there and help. You know, they were following their passion because life is too short. And even though we do reincarnate, like you mentioned earlier, we go into another life. And so I think that I saw a lot of that, even though there was a lot of other things that were going on, but there was a quietness and a stillness that happened from being by yourself, or just being with your family or loved ones. And so I thought that was, if we could find a positive that happened out of the last year and a half, that's one of the things that I saw. And of course, there was a lot of other things that, it was very obvious that wasn't so positive, but there was a lot of other positives that came up in that time frame. So,
yes, I totally agree. I can't believe that during the last year and a half, the changes that I personally went through and the changes that the world went through, we've done a lot of human collective decision making during this time. And I really felt as if it was one of those forks in the road for human destiny, certainly in our country. It's been very, very challenging. We still have so much more that we need to sort through regarding the effects of living most of our lives virtually these days. You know, people have been working on Zoom or, on their computers from home. The world is a smaller place. I mean, we can talk to anybody anywhere in the world for free on Zoom, unlike during the long distance telephone days that you were referring to. And yet, I think psychologically, clearly, we don't understand how easily people are influenced And there are people who have studied how to influence the masses, since the 50s, since ad man days. There have been people who have really studied mass psychology and how to get an advertising campaign to really work, how to change human behavior. And that is really the enormous challenge of this day, is that our behaviors and our thoughts are being manipulated through the big players online who know how to do that, and through AI, through the algorithms. And most of us, have no idea it's happening. Some of us know it's happening, or we know something's happening, but we don't know what to do about it. I think that eventually this whole process needs to be understood more powerfully, and I think that we need to be protected from manipulation through our virtual lives. I think most of us are probably on our phones and computers at least as much, and including television, at least as much as we are without it. Some people might be living their lives virtually 90% of the time. They're not really in the outside world. Yeah. This is their world. Yeah. And it's a challenge for today, for these times. And I think that other countries have done possibly a better job of teaching people what to watch for, how to tell when somebody's lying or manipulating you online, or when you're being scammed, how to recognize that, how to recognize the scams, how not to fall prey to that. So we need our education, we need to be caught up, our laws need to get caught up with our virtual lives. It's really the challenge of today. At this, and then of course the other side of that pendulum is that a lot of good can come through virtual existence. Like shows like yours, or classes that we can take online with people that are thousands of miles away. And we could learn something. A lot of people have gotten degrees online. A lot of people have changed their careers. They've gotten certified. They've had a lot of amazing experiences. So, but there's a lot on an energy wavelength level that's going on beneath their words, beneath the appearance, that's affecting us. And I think that is something that psychology, and people are working on this, but eventually we will learn more about it, and the online experience, the virtual experience, hopefully will be safer one day, because it's not going away. We're going into it even more, and we're in the age of Aquarius now. And just recently we had 2 billionaires go up in their own rockets. I mean, for God's sakes. And pretty soon we're going to be living in space colonies. I mean, there are going to be babies that are born on space stations. Yep. That have never been on Earth. They might live their entire lives up there. And so that's here sooner than we realize. I mean, people are already working on that. So the future is going to be the sci-fi movies of today. Just like the sci-fi movies of yesteryear. That's the world that we're living in now.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping for the Jetsons, though. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, well, we'll probably have our own, robots and things like that. We already do. I mean, my God, I've got one vacuuming my house every day.
Yeah, that's right. My friend Damien calls that Kevin, his robot that vacuums his house. So I'm like,
yeah, mine's called Muffin.
Muffin, you get that? You remember? Get that piece over there. That'd be great.
Yeah. I have a
So
friend who says Rumba is called Rover. So, we personify these machines because they move and they seem to know what they're doing. And we treat them like they're alive, like they're pets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to have our personal robots. Those will be friends. We won't need people anymore eventually, possibly. All of this is so powerful, and it's now. We're in the age of Aquarius. This technology in the last few years, just think of the last 30 years. My God, think 30 years from now.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be 10 times more than what we experienced in the last 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Victor, I just wanted to show everybody that I had your website up a few times here, victorparuta.com. It's also in the description of the show. So, definitely, you do sessions, I'm assuming, readings that they can book with you. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing readings. I'm just as busy as I've ever been. I've been a working psychic since 1990, a professional. So, my goodness, that's 31 years. So half my life I've been doing readings, and I can do readings by phone. I can do readings on Zoom, FaceTime, in person, even though these days there's a little less of that. But it's powerful. It's really a great experience that you can have online. Yeah, all this stuff. Isn't it interesting to be able to do a reading or read somebody's aura over Zoom? They don't have to be there, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that their energies really do project, over the screen.
Yep. Yeah, I do energy healing through Zoom all the time. And it's like, and then people get freaked out. They're like, how are you doing that? They'll be in on the other side of the country. I'm like, it's just energy. Energy doesn't have 1,000 miles between us, or 2,000 miles, or 4,000 miles.
It is not limited by time or space.
Yeah.
And so of course it can't be done. Yeah. I provide a lot of different services. Primarily, when I do a reading, I use a variety of techniques. I've always been predominantly clairvoyant, where I get images in my mind's eye. But I'm also a psychic medium. I can see spirits with my inner eye, in my mind's eye. And also when I'm looking at somebody, I can often see the spirits with my physical eyes. I do paranormal work, paranormal investigations and clearings. And I do tarot readings. Usually when I do a reading for somebody, it's a multifaceted approach. I use a variety of techniques. I still find it really fascinating, the whole process, how it works. It all works. It's all real. Astrology works. Every divination system works if you know how to use it. If you're reading cards, you don't want to just read the meanings out of the book. You need to read into the cards. They need to give you psychic information. They are basically just something for you to rest your eyes on, so that your psychic mind can focus on something and retrieve psychic knowledge or psychic information. So it's basically all coming from the third eye way of connecting with people. But it's very magical to me how, when you can connect with somebody's energy, and when you've got their energy, bam, that moment when you connect, and once you have that energy, you can see anything you want to see about the person. And I always find it very magical the way spirit communicates with us. It's exciting. It's still exciting to make those connections for people, and to have spirits come through with their messages for their loved ones. And most people have experienced an after-death communication from a loved one, but most people think they made it up, or they're making it up. But they're trying to get a hold of you. They're trying to get through to you, but at the same time, they don't want to frighten you. So my dad, I don't know, how are we doing on time? Are we
Another minute or two or so.
Another minute or two. My father has been dead for about 20 years. And when he was alive, he just flat out told me, he said, you know, son, I just don't believe in the work you do. I don't believe in the work you've devoted your life to. And then, you know, even though I went to church every Sunday, he once confided in me and said, you know, there's nothing after this. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You simply cease to exist. There's no life after death. There's no heaven. There's no hell. There's no nothing. And then he died. And a couple of years after he died, the night before his birthday, he showed up in my kitchen. It's like, oh, Dad. And he came through with so much love and with so much pride. And it felt so good because, you know, the look on his face, it was like beaming with pride for me and the work I do, because when he was alive, he didn't understand it. And since he's been dead, he's come through almost every time I'm having a session with a medium. And I've had my sisters have readings with mediums, and Dad has come through for them. And once my sister asked my dad through the medium, well, how come you never believed in this when you were alive? I mean, you know, he said, I had no idea this was possible. You know, in his history, in his biographical history, he'd never come across a psychic medium. He'd never had this type of an experience. He really did not know it was possible. And now that he knows it's possible, he is enjoying it, and he makes us laugh. The messages that come through are so him. And it's given my sisters and I so much comfort to know that he's with us, that he's still with us, and that he loves us even more profoundly now than he did when he was alive. And, you know, he could be himself now. He didn't have to hide that love, and he didn't have to hide the feelings. And he's such a good man. And, you know, I didn't really appreciate him until I've had those connections since his death, because before he was playing the role of my dad, and maybe he thought he had to be my dad, or he had to act certain ways because he was my dad. But now it's just love, and it's such a beautiful experience, and it's something that I'm so happy to be able to say to you right now, because it's something that is true, I think, for all of us. We do have loved ones who love us so much from the other side. They're there even though we may not know they're there, even though we may not have felt a communication from them, but ask them for one. And chances are they'll come into your dreams, or you'll see one of the standard signs that dead people can leave behind, which are rainbows or butterflies. You know, it's true. I mean, somehow dead people have a straight line up to rainbows. I mean, they almost always leave me a rainbow the day after their death or during their transition. So they come through a lot of times, and the relationships get healed. You know, I really consider it a privilege to do this work. People who don't understand psychic work don't really understand how sublime and sacred and special and spiritual it can really be to be a channel for spiritual love. And it really is such a privilege. And, you know, it's good to own it. You know, this is my role in the scheme of things. This is the role that I've played. I feel that I've played in many past lives. And it's something we need. There are people out there that have never been exposed to spirituality, this type of spirituality, but it's what they need. They need the love. They need to know they're loved. They need to know they matter. They need to know they are not alone. They need to know their lives have meaning, and that everything in their lives is a very, very special gift.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Victor, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been absolutely wonderful. And for everybody watching, I would like to just, remind everybody that the show is every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. This show will also be on demand on LA Tribune TV on Roku. It takes a couple days for them to get that up on the Roku network. But it's so you can go back and watch all the shows there. And then next week, my guest is going to be my friend Mama Gina, or Gina. She's been a friend of mine for a long time. Hopefully we'll get her to play some music, a song on the show. And then also, she's just an incredible all-around spiritual teacher. She's been traveling around to festivals for probably, I want to say 7 or 8 years now, just living in her car traveling. That was her dream. When she hit 50, she was going to start going to all the festivals around the country as a spiritual teacher and musician. And she's been doing exactly that. It's been incredible. So we'll be hearing about her story. So again, Victor, it's very much a blessing to have you here. What's next for Victor? Are you doing any trips or anything happening anytime soon, or anything you want to tell the viewers about? They maybe will go with you. I know you go to Ireland sometimes. That's why I'm asking. So
I'm in one of those. Thanks for asking, Jeremy. I'm in one of those transitional periods in my life. I've run the Victory of Light Expo for 28 years, and I just recently sold it to Body, Mind, Spirit Expos. I'm still doing, they'll be running it from now on in Cincinnati, Victory of Light Expo. It's one of the largest metaphysical conventions in the country. Well, I'm going to keep doing my spiritual readings, my psychic readings. I'm going to be doing more platform mediumship in front of audiences, and I will continue to do shows like yours online and do some writing. And I don't know where it's all going to lead. I'm kind of in a transitional space, a major transitional space. So I'm kind of in the process of becoming, but I'm very confident that I'm in the right place. And I had that confirmation from a very high source. So I feel good about having made the choices I've made to pass the show along to somebody else and to move on to a yet to be discovered future.
Wonderful, wonderful. Everybody, thank you so much for watching the show and being a part of the show, because the show wouldn't be here without the people watching it. And then be blessed, everybody. Have an amazing week, and much love.